Welcome to Supply Circles, stories from the innovators, disruptors and improvers in supply chain management today, brought to you by AI Group.
Ho, 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 too many hoes. Hey, it's Christmas time. This is our last fortnightly podcast for the year. In a fortnight's time, it will be Christmas, and no doubt a happy white-bearded gentleman will bring you wonderful surprises. I hope you have a great Christmas. But in the meantime, this white-bearded happy fellow is keen to give you a gift of another fascinating episode full of surprises. Hello, I'm James Scotland, and I'm coming to you today from the Yungaminbar country in Queensland. Thank you for joining me. A hearty welcome if this is your first time, and welcome back to all our regular listeners. Thank you all. Yes, this is Supply Circles, the podcast that asks the question, how can we in Australia create supply chains that are resilient and sustainable at a time when we are implementing the challenges of the 3Ds? Digitalisation to keep up with your peers in your industries, decarbonisation to meet your legal requirements and targets by 2050 and in some states 2045, and ongoing disruptions, which come in many shapes, not only pandemics, but also industry disruptions, product disruptions, logistical interruptions and challenges, technology changes, global inflation, generational change, and many more. Each fortnight, I delve into different sections of the end-to-end supply chain. I chat with fascinating and interesting people, and we try to have some fun along the way. For this last episode of the year, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the year that's been, have a look at the year ahead, and to think about the leadership issues of both. What have we learned? What has changed? What do we need to do to prepare for what will no doubt be a busy 2024? And I thought it would be a good idea to learn how to holiday, how to rest, how to recover, and how to rebuild. So let's talk leadership and rest. Last episode, I asked Michael Kagara to return to the show to talk about supply chains and infrastructure. And this episode, we've got another returning guest. I'm pleased to say Karen Fuster is with us again to discuss leadership and ongoing change, and especially how to manage in ambiguity, how to manage ambiguous situations. This is Karen's specialty. For those who don't know, Karen is the founder and CEO of Change 2020 and a veritable fount of knowledge in this subject. So, hello, Karen. Welcome back. How are you? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. I am fabulous, thank you. It's my favourite time of year, so always in a good mood around Christmas time. I love it.
I think that's a song, isn't it? Favourite time of the year or something, Christmas?
Probably.
So I saw a meme the other day that said, it's not particularly flattering when the song says, all I want for Christmas is you.
Yeah, you could look at it that way. It's all about tones.
Hey, let's remind everyone who you are. Why don't you tell us the Karen Fuster story? You know it better than anyone.
Yeah, I guess I should, shouldn't I? So firstly, I'm a mum, and one of my children is actually over in the UK. So Christmas this year for us is a white Christmas, and hoping that the snow actually does tumble down whilst
nothing like
it. There in Austria. Yeah, so that's great. And my daughter's just finishing her nursing degree, which is also wonderful. I am, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of Change 2020, and I also have a second company called Adaptic Minds. And both of them, they're complementary. So Change 2020 very much around leadership, culture, understanding change and the opportunity within change. And Adaptic Minds looks very much around the brain and how we respond to ambiguity, which is quite different from change, and understanding what triggers us and how we can better understand our tolerance level of ambiguity and therefore how we can respond to it. So between both of those companies, it keeps me pretty busy. Other than that, I guess I love to be with my family, friends, socialising, and I'm pretty keen on being on a flight to anywhere. Actually, I enjoy travel a lot.
It sounds like a full life, and it's good to get that balance between, work-life balance, being able to do both. Let's talk about that a bit later. Ambiguity and change. We talked about it last time we were on the show, but it's a fascinating question. I think everyone's used to the idea of managing change, of leading change, and I since our last conversation, I've sort of had in my mind the idea of the difference between ambiguity and change is that change is when there's a defined endpoint. As I said, when I was a change manager, you would say, here's where we need to get to. We don't have any choice. We have to get to a new spot, but here's the spot. Here's how we'll get there. Let's do it step by step. And you'd manage the change. Not always easy to do, but it's very defined as to how to do it. Whereas ambiguity is when you don't know what the hell is going on. It's just all very clear. And one way I described it recently, I'll tell you my analogy and I'd be interested in yours, is that you may need to move from New York to Oregon. And so you pack up all your belongings in a U-Haul or a moving truck, and you drive across the country and you get the flat tires and do all sorts of stuff, stay in weird motels. But you get there and you know it's going to happen and you just manage your way. Whereas ambiguity is more like the early pioneers with their wagon trains and the TV show 1883, where you know that you're going into the unknown. You don't know exactly what's going on. You've got some skills and you're prepared as best you can, but you have to lead and you don't know exactly how it's going to pan out. It's much more foggy. Is that a good way to describe the difference between ambiguity and change?
I thought it was a splendid analogy. Having not been to Oregon, I was quite interested in the story.
I haven't been there either, by the way.
That's absolutely the case. The thing about change is we have been doing it all of our lives. We have evolved, we adapt. We move schools as kids, we move states, we move countries. If we look at it from a pure workplace perspective, we implement new systems, we change office locations, have restructures, etc. I'm not suggesting it's easy because we're not built to embrace change, but largely we know how to do it and we endure it, or we ideally manage it quite well and we move through it. Ambiguity, to your point, you said at the end, it's like the fogginess, and that's exactly what it is. It is incredibly unfamiliar. It feels well and truly outside of our control. It has uncertainty through the roof, and it's confusing. It often means that we haven't had preconceived ideas of how to get to the end result. And the challenge is we try to apply our same ways of dealing with change to ambiguity, whilst it can be a precursor to getting an outcome. It does require a different skill set, a different mindset, and different behaviours, different tolerance levels to actually manage it effectively and find a way to move through it, or sit with it. More to the point, sit with it and say, I don't know the answer. I do know, though, that sitting still is not the answer. So we're going to have to take a bet. We have to go left or right. We have to do something. And speed is really important. Sitting around waiting for all the right information to come through, that all the data points that you really would love to have to make this decision, that's a luxury that you don't have in a state of high ambiguity, because there's either too many data points, confusing data points, not enough data points, yet needing to move forward is still critical. And so that is one of the real challenges of ambiguity. I don't know if this is the right step forward. Whereas largely in change, we do know, as you said, once you pack the U-Haul, then you've got to make sure you got the fuel. You know where you're staying for the first night. You know what you're doing. Whereas that's very different in ambiguity.
Yeah, it's this bias to action, I think, is probably the good way of sort of capturing that. And back to those wagon trains in that TV show, 1883, at one stage there's a whole bunch of wagon trains they have to cross a river. They can't stay where they are because winter's coming and they're going to die or something. If they go up river 3 weeks and they're going to lose the rest of summer. If they go down river, they don't know what's down river. Or we cross here, but here is dangerous. Which way to go? And sooner or later, someone has to make a decision. Someone has to say, no, we're doing this. And there's plenty of objections, there's plenty of reasons why it's not right, but someone says, no, we're going to do this. This is our bias to action. Do you see that in people trying to manage ambiguity?
Oh, most certainly. A degree of assertion is critical. The alternative is that we don't move anywhere. And in your scenario, we either get washed away or, freeze to death over the winter. So that's not an option. So understanding what is the one step I can take forward? How do I get really focused on what I largely feel confident about or know to be true, or I have a sense that, the risk profile is lesser if we go this way. Standing still is I think, one of the biggest problems associated with ambiguity, because it frustrates people. And that sense of we're not going anywhere, we are just stuck, is really problematic. Ideally, we want to find a way how we can move forward. We love to be able to predict where we're going and how we're doing it. Ambiguity doesn't allow that. But if you also choose to just sit still, waiting for something to happen to you, your ability to predict anything is only dire, because you're not going to be able to progress in any way, shape or form. So that assertion and getting really focused takes courage as well. You have to be prepared to use courage to get to that next step.
It really does test your value, your corporate value of prepare to fail, fail fast, or acceptance of failure, because there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be the wrong decisions occasionally. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and they're okay. That's the way we continue to progress and learn.
The greatest ambiguous situation that we will face in our lifetime, I hope, was COVID. I hope it doesn't get as ambiguous as that, where we had no idea what was going on. No one did. We're making it up as we go. What have we learned? What have your clients learned? What have you learned since COVID settled down and we're in perhaps we're more able to handle ambiguity now, but we don't know. I don't know. Tell me what you think has been the lessons for you.
Yeah, look, I do think it's been a couple of years really since COVID has been at its height and really been impactful in the workplace. And there's significant flow on about what does that mean for us in the workplace today? How are we working hybrid, face-to-face, remote, work from home, whatever it might be. And that's a quandary, I think, ongoing for many organisations. A few things which I think we've retained and I really hope we continue to retain is focus on well-being, not just am I working reasonable hours, but well-being of the whole person, understanding that we need to pay attention to giving people the best opportunity to be themselves at work. And I don't mean a free-for-all. I mean that they can actually bring all themselves and that their well-being is going to be looked after. So I think that's been a significant takeaway. I think elements around trust have also been really quite interesting. When we were forced to work remotely, the trust factor was a significant contributor to whether people were able to really jump in and work remotely and continue to be productive and move forward and stay connected. You had to just assume that that's what was happening. And the assumption was much easier if you were trusted people. Those who decided to implement keystroke counts and, have to check in every 10 or 15 minutes or something like that, that was really problematic and definitely not of use. So the trust factor has been a really significant contributor as well. I think the other thing is the knowledge that we are better when we connect, and whatever connection might look like. So whether it is this face-to-face way of working or over Zoom or Teams or whatever that might be, that connection where we can still see each other as a human, look into each other's eyes, have a look at the body language, be a bit more relaxed to understand what's going on in that person's environment, be it if they're working from a home office or in a building. So knowing that however I'm working, I'm still got a sense of connection and belonging. And I think that really became apparent, the need for that during the pandemic. And I see that is staying in place. Obviously the last one, well not the last one, but another very obvious one is around flexibility. That leaders had to be very, very prepared to flex. What did that look like for the individual? Initially, again, what was safe for them? What was their work environment going to look like at home? Were they going to be physically safe? Were they environmentally safe? Was it even going to make sense from a perspective of being productive? If you had a whole lot of children at home, homeschooling, all of the complexities with that took an enormous reach for people to be that flexible. And whilst it certainly is curtailing and coming back in, that that sense of if you trust, if you know I'm going to connect, if you're looking after my well-being and we can be flexible together, maybe that's quite okay as a rhythm of our workplace. And that was really triggered, I believe, and largely is still in place in organisations that we get to work with.
You raised some fascinating points there. When it comes to flexibility and connection, speaking in metaphors or analogies again, if you walk along the Brisbane River, you'll see some wonderful old warehouses that have now been turned into apartment blocks and whatever. You see them in most cities. But if you look at them, they've got big windows. They've got these tall windows. And the reason they've got tall windows is because our working life was based around, it was designed, the Industrial Revolution type working was designed before we had electric light. So we built big windows and we went to work during the day because we didn't have electric light. So we basically worked during daylight hours. Even when we moved off the country into factories, we worked daylight hours. And a recent guest on the show, when we were talking about artificial intelligence, was saying that we designed our factories around where the electricity source was, or where the power source, where the coal source was, because that's the way that we had to do it. And it took a long time to redesign. My point is that now we don't need to work based on daylight. We don't need to work on close proximity. We don't need to do a whole lot of things. We need to redesign the way we see work, not just do work. And you're describing that by talking about flexibility and connection. Are we learning fast enough?
I love that question. I believe, and also I love the learning I've just had about why the windows are so high in the mall store here in Brisbane. Is my takeaway from that. Are we learning fast enough? I believe some organisations are. I believe the momentum is strong enough that those that are not learning at pace or a bit reluctant for the learning, that they'll be dragged along with the momentum. What we're definitely seeing is, I think, the bargaining power that the employee had around remote working or hybrid working, it seems to be dissipating. There is a general trend towards increased back to the office. But what we're not necessarily seeing is that trend where it is a 5-day week, 9 to 5 or whatever that sort of traditional way of working. There is still that degree of flexibility because of the understanding of well-being and connection. So knowing that maybe it's a 9-day fortnight where, the one day they're remote, or it's still that hybrid model. So I think that the idea of the employee being able to say, I choose to be fully remote, and if that's not what you provide for me, then I will go elsewhere, that is slowing. And that's being driven by our economic environment, inflation, cost of living, energy costs soaring, all of the factors that we're all grappling with. The quiet quitting and the great resignation is really slowing it. I know there's a debate as to whether that was ever a thing. I think it was a thing. But regardless, the other external factors are really also driving our way of work and our design around work. There's no doubt that the ability to reach globally to get the talent that you need for your organisation is a brilliant asset that we can all have access to. But what comes with that is a need to work out how are you going to connect, how are you going to ensure that they are included, that they feel part of the culture, that they are being productive and delivering value for the organisation. And that means that leaders are continually having to learn, try different approaches. Because if you can't have it both ways, you can't be, for example, based in Brisbane and decide that the best person for the role is either in Hobart, Perth or Auckland or Oregon, and then not try harder to make sure they stay with you from an inclusiveness perspective. And so that relationship, I think, is where we're still really working out how do we connect as well as we possibly can, because there's no doubt we know as humans we like to be with a tribe and we like to be together. But what does that look like in the modern world as that continues to evolve?
What does that mean for leadership? that's a sort of a rhetorical question. Let me just sort of lead on a bit further. As we head into a new year, and Happy New Year, a new one around already is a bit scary. But as we head into a new year, we're starting to see millennials moving into senior management. We're seeing the Gen Zs coming in as pouring out of university, and they've got a different approach to it. In an earlier episode this year, I spoke to some academics who were saying that the kids coming out of university who have got degrees, and they dislike intensely the idea of saying we always do it that way or we've always done it that way, because they say it doesn't work. That's just ridiculous. There's a rapidly changing world. So you're dealing with people who are quite entrepreneurial, who are very much aware of the fact that their new thinking is needed, and they're being managed by people who have got their own unique way of seeing the world. What's the workplace like in terms of leadership? How do we put this amalgam together now and it's totally different from when you first entered the workforce, although I don't want to age you, Karen.
Thank you, James. Very kind. It's generational leadership has always had to evolve. So when the boomers were leading the Gen Xers, there was a clash there. Sort of everyone has an office, everyone, works in a certain way. This is how we do things around here.
Oh, the kids today have got no idea how hard that was. Having to call the boss Mr. Gunn and go into his office and stand straight whilst he told his stuff. And
see, just a crazy concept that could have been happening. And then, the Gen Xers had to deal with the millennials, and there was like a clash of cultures there. And so we go on. And that's the way of the world. The alternative is that we don't evolve and grow. So I'm pretty happy for that to continue to be coming on. And I like the fact that it's a test and challenge, and we have to find a new way of doing things. The leaders have to be so incredibly open-minded. Beyond that whole growth mindset. What else is possible? What else can I learn? How else can I adapt? The idea that you're in a position of authority because of the hierarchy of the organisational structure or tenure, that's gone by the wayside and has for some time. Leaders are those who are inspiring others, who are creating an environment where great questions are the way we go about doing things, and anyone can be involved in that. They're the people who they're guiding and they're taking care of the environment. They don't need to be the subject matter expert. They don't need to be all roads lead to them for decisions. They generally speaking, have got great factors around or, behaviours around, courage and decisiveness and presence, and ideally they're great at communicating. All of those, you could have grown up as a lawyer, as an accountant, as an HR person, whatever you might have been, as a tradie, all of those factors. Once you get to a position of leadership, it evolves into that generalist behaviours that people are looking for, and that's the stickiness. I choose to stay in an organisation where the leader does inspire me, where it's okay for me to challenge ideas and be heard, where we have some robust conversations, where it's okay, as you said before, to try and fail. They're the things that we look for in leadership. So how will leadership deal with the next generation coming through? The same as probably the baby boomers did. And it won't be easy. It's not like, welcome. There's judgment. We judge the next generation. We're appalled about that. But it's because it feels different. It's unfamiliar to us. And so trying to understand that, ideally without judgment, is pretty important, because it's not going to stop. As you say, that's the way the world goes. The next generation now go into the more senior roles. And the other factor that leaders really need to be aware of, we mentioned before, AI, generative AI, the way they're going to lead, it won't even just be a bunch of humans. It's going to be how humans are interacting with technology. And if you don't have a growth mindset around that, you are really going to find yourself struggling, I would assume.
Yeah, I was going to lead on to AI. Our minds went to the same spot, and particularly generative AI. When we were talking about it in the previous episode, I was sort of saying it's going to be quite possible that you have meetings, you record the meetings, and then you say to AI, develop a list of to-dos, develop a strategy plan for us, just punch it out. Doesn't mean it's right. It's just going to do the work for you, and then it needs the humans to figure out what's right. How is the workplace going to let's stick on leadership. How is leadership going to work this? I gathered from what you were saying, what I heard from what you were saying before, is basically leaders need to, delve deeply into their humanity, to be humans. You're not, as a leader, you're not the person at the front saying charge. That's just silliness. What you're doing is you all those traits that you've said, the empathy and inspire and create the environment. That's leadership, and you factor that into AI. Am I putting words into your mouth, or is that exactly where you've been thinking?
No, that is right. That's the challenge with that space is, if we come back to inclusiveness, what does it mean for me to be included and have a sense of belonging? When I used to take the minutes in a meeting, when I used to issue the action points, or when we would go off site for 2 days to think about the strategy and get all the inputs and the ideas of the humans, of the energy of the humans. Now are we going to be reviewing something that AI has developed for us, and then we look at that and go, will that work or will that not? Does that take away our role? In some traditional ways, yes, it does, but it also adds an opportunity for creativity. It adds that opportunity for us to be really, really curious and delve into that next level. Well, how would that work? That looks great on paper, that plan. Where's the how? What do we know about our stakeholder groups, our environment, our customers, our members, our students, whatever industry you're in? How do we overlay that very uniquely human trait that we have, which is around connection, empathy, being able to understand the position of others and ourselves, and having that care and that kindness, but also the cleverness. We've seen things in the past and said, yes, we tried that. Doesn't mean we can't try it again, but let's also add this factor in, or take this one out, because that's where we blew up. So that aspect of being a human isn't going away. That is our point of differentiation. And leaders, the skill there is, how do they keep them motivated and inspired when the machine does it in, a nanosecond in comparison to how we do it? How do we overlay that creativity and the human traits we spoke of before to add value? That's the critical opportunity. And I see some fantastic leaders who are doing that, and they're often brilliant listeners. They'll sit back and they'll really deeply listen to what's happening for people, whether it is around change or ambiguity or new opportunities, listening to the way people are trying to solve the problem, the increasingly complex problems. And they're also they've got very good questions that trigger a deeper level of thinking. They also are the people that are, when it does get all too hard and the uncertainties, really starting to take hold of people, they provide some guidance. AI could say to you, here's your 10 steps to move through this uncertainty. And I can promise you it does that really rapidly. And they're not wrong, but it's the how. Will that make sense for me today, for that person today, for this team today, for our organisation? That's what I think leaders have the opportunity to do, to humanise the cleverness of AI to make it work for that organisation.
Yeah, just to put AI into context, my favourite story is that as it's still being developed, it's still a new technology, you can ask, you can get a pretty accurate answer as to how long will it take me to walk across the English Channel. Now, it's the wrong answer, but it will give you the correct answer, if that makes sense. But it's wrong. Humans know it's wrong. Right?
Yes.
So AI has its limitations. It's like a young intern who knows everything and is got lots of answers, but they're not always right when you put the humanity around it. It sounds to me, we've got to wrap this part up, but it sounds to me that you're saying that the trait that's going to come through more than anything as we head into this new generational change, new technology, new work environment, dispersed work, we're going to need the leadership trait of bravery. You're going to have to be brave.
Yes, absolutely, because it puts us well outside of our comfort zone. It feels uncomfortable to take that step towards uncertainty or reinvent the way you thought leadership was going to work for you. It means you've got to go deep within yourself and work out, what can I do? What do I think I need to learn to do? What am I prepared to do to make a difference? And ultimately, we know the job of the leader is to create more leaders. It is for them to be the ones that show the way in a very human way, which is, I think this might be something that we should go with. And if it's not right, then we can turn it around. I'm not suggesting we can do that all the time. I'm not, I understand the, obviously the economic impacts of making a series of incorrect decisions. But at the same time, you do want someone to be courageous enough to say, this is what we're going to do. And here's the things we're going to put in place. The moment we can see this decision is not going to work for us, how do we course correct as rapidly as we possibly can? So it's not blindly going forward and saying, I have a gut feeling and off we go. But it certainly is the courage, as you say, or bravery to say, but this is what we're going to do as a first step.
It's a fascinating conversation. I've got lots more questions to ask you, but we should take a break. Before we get to the break, a question I do like to ask, if I may, is tell me about your name. I think it's a beautiful name, like Karen Fuster. It's not harsh enough to be German, I wouldn't think. It's not soft enough to be. It sounds like Anglo-Saxon somewhere. But tell me about it. Do you know anything about it?
I do know a little bit about it. It's actually French, and it's from the 14th century. The term means to be a saddle tree maker.
To be
it
what?
is a saddle tree maker. So you're making the saddles over there. So
not what I expected.
It's not very common at all, and people notoriously spell it wrong. Which is perfectly fine because it is a bit tricky, and an additional R gets put in the front, or there's different ways. But so it's Fuster, and that's where it comes from. And it's interesting. There's probably in Australia, I don't know, there might be a dozen Fusters on LinkedIn, and I always feel like I must know them somehow because it's so uncommon, and I'm connected to some of them, but maybe through Ancestry.com I'll find a few more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a rude question. I don't mean it to be. Is it your name, or is it your family name, or your married name? Yes,
it is.
Name. Yeah.
No, it is my family name. Yes.
Like it. Yeah, great name. All right. Well, Karen Fuster, let's
take
a break and we'll be back in a minute.
If you have supply chain or business improvement challenges, contact AI Group's Business Improvement and Growth Hub. The Big Hub is a library of practical and relevant resources designed to assist member businesses to grow and improve. The Big Hub also includes an extensive network of experienced pre-qualified business improvement consultants. For more details, contact big@aigroup.com.au. That's big@aigroup.com.au.
Karen, before the break, we were talking about the ambiguity of the last few years, and then the changes that are happening in the workplace. Work from home is now a big thing, and we've got AI coming in. We've got different generations moving into different parts of the organisation, so there's generational change happening. We need to be flexible, and we need to be connected, and we need to be brave, and we need to reinvent, which is a good thing to talk about when we're heading into the Christmas break. It gives us a chance to stop and reflect and to refresh. Before we get to that question, before we get there, we have to have the Christmas parties. One of the the great traps of management and organisations. I read a while ago an opinion piece where the writer said that team building activities, such as Christmas parties, were contrived and manufactured jollity that seldom work in enhancing social cohesion, mental well-being and productivity. The author said that there was a difference between prescribing and fostering culture and the strict instructions that sometimes do more harm than good. He said those that are responsible for creating these sort of things should make it easier on themselves by considering such basic principles. Not everyone has fun in the same way. Not everyone likes to go dancing or likes party cakes or table tennis or all this other stuff that you might want to do, and they might not even like parties. What's the best way to get the best out of these moments when we bring everyone together and say, okay, let's be one big, happy, jolly organisation? How do we lead that?
That's interesting. Look, there's some truth to that author and that article. Of course, we're different. Thankfully, we're all different. So I, for one, am a supporter of definitely getting people together if we can, and where people are having the opportunity to connect face to face, break bread together, laugh together, etc. But I think let's give people choice. If they don't want to do that, if it's uncomfortable that they find themselves standing on a karaoke stage, which apparently for some people that is quite uncomfortable, then don't make them do it. There can be expectations in a workplace about you must come into work 2 or 3 days a week, for example. But I don't think we can have those expectations in terms of, and now we're having fun. Now we're going rock climbing, or now we're going to do something quite extraordinary in terms of, doing a big painting event. If somebody doesn't want to do it, it doesn't mean that they're not a part of the team. So I don't think forcing fun on anyone has ever worked, ever since we were kids either. That just doesn't work. Being inclusive, but I don't think it's possible, in all fairness, to put out, what would you all like to do? If you put that question out to 20 people, you might get 15 responses, which are different. And the thing is, not everyone gets a prize. We can't please every single person. What we can do, though, is treat them as adults and say, you have a choice. You are fully invited. We would love you to be with us. If that's not your choice, we fully respect it. We'll see you after Christmas. Be safe. Something like that.
Yeah, people are interesting, aren't they? I'm a great people watcher, as I know that you are. And if you've got a group of people together, there are those that are very boisterous and bringing everyone together. And then you say, well, get on stage and present an award. And they go, oh, God, no, I'm not going to do that. Whereas other people who are quite quiet are more than happy to get up there and say something. It's just the fact that everyone's different, isn't it? It's back to this humanity thing.
Absolutely, and respecting that is critical. We do a lot of work using either the Myers-Briggs or HBDI.
Well, this is Myers-Briggs, isn't it? This idea of everyone has got different personality traits. It's different from behaviour.
Absolutely,
it's different from behaviour, personality.
That's right, and we can adapt and we can change. But saying to somebody, this is going to be fun, by putting them so far out of their comfort zone for a 6-hour period, that's not fun for them. Just because you think it is, it's not. So respect the differences, invite, include, and give people choice.
And then we get past the Christmas party and we have a chance to step away from work, be with family and friends, which can be equally fraught with angst. And then we have a time to rebuild and refresh and think about the year ahead maybe, or don't think about anything. Tell me your wise words on coach me, Karen. Help me come back to work refreshed. How do I do that as a leader that's got to be brave and human and open? And how do I go away and get my mojo back?
Do you know, I think when we're being fully true to ourselves, it's much easier to bring your mojo, to be energetic. Energetic in how you need to be. So I don't mean, the loudest person in the room, but bringing your energy, your presence back into the workplace. So for me, I know it's absolutely connecting with my friends and family, finding a place where I feel I'm away from the noise, and also I'm my own worst enemy, as many people are. Say to people, put your out of office on. I will not be responding to emails for this 10-day period or whatever it might be. Put in some blockers there or some alternative who can respond for you. But, ultimately it is what grounds you. Is it your feet on the sand? Is it, being on top of a mountain? Is it just being in your favourite corner in your house, reading a book when the sun comes in, having a cup of tea with those you love? Whatever that is that helps you come back to, this is the real reason I'm on this planet. Work is a part of what we do. It's a significant part. So ideally we want it to be a contributor to our well-being and that we really enjoy it. But to be our best, we need to be rested. We do need to reconnect and then go, okay, I'm coming back in. I've got some new ideas. I had some space to think. I feel like I've learned from the year that was. I think that's interesting to reflect and say, if I was to, map the rhythm of the last 12 months, how often am I above the line versus below the line? Mood, do I behave? Decisions I made, did I take opportunities or was I overly cautious? Doing a reflection like that, and some people will journal, some people will talk about it, some people just think about it. I think that helps to be aware of, and what might I want to do more of in the coming year, or what do I want to leave behind? But just finding some space in our heads away from, the craziness of the presents, and which, mind you, are fun. Christmas, as I said earlier, is my favourite time of the year. So all of that energy, I love being around it, but you also need some quiet for your own benefit to be able to think and reflect and then go, okay, this is what my next year, I hope for it to look like. And to do that, there's one or two things I'm going to start to think about a little more clearly, or we'll bring it to the surface a bit more frequently, so I don't get myself caught in either a rut or see myself below the line more often than what is desirable.
It's they're great words. They're very wise. It's the idea about getting back to what's me, because we get so wrapped up in work me, I forget about me sometimes. Yeah, good words. What drives us on? What is it that makes it happen? So you're the Christmas fairy, eh? You're you're a Christmas carol.
Actually, if my younger sister listens to this, she is the Christmas fairy for sure. So the puddings are hanging, and we certainly she looks after the Christmas list, who's buying for who and where we're going to be. So all of that. There's always been for us it's family. And so we come together, and I feel very blessed for that it's not, yes, of course, it's stressful over some areas, but they're so minute in comparison to the benefit of connecting and being close to those who I love the most. So it's easy.
Yeah, I love this because it's this combination of Karen, who runs two very, very busy, successful businesses, and yet is still very much, her own person and has a full life. This balance that we all search for. I'm sure the balance is not always exactly right, but it sounds.
Of course, it's not. But it's built on. I don't believe I could do any of the. I mean, my work is such a privilege. I get to work with people and have conversations with people about who they are, who they want to be, how they're going, how they connect, what's important to them, and so that's. There's a bit more to it, but that's essentially areas that I get to be around all the time, and it's a privilege. And I feel quite sure that I wouldn't be able to be authentic and be myself in that space if I didn't have not the real me, the bigger me, which is the reason that I get up each day.
The bigger me. Let's talk.
Literally,
Let's talk about. We need to finish, but you mentioned before this idea about renew, not just refresh, but renew. The lessons that we're learning from this conversation and we've been hearing all year is it's going to be different. It's going to keep changing all the time. And so we're going to have to, as leaders, leave things behind. We're going to have to say, what made me successful in the past needs to be left behind because it won't keep me successful in the future. How do we do that? How do we approach that in this period? Do we think about it? Do we not think about it? Do we, use this period to be studying hard? I don't know. Just reflect, go and sit on a beach and stare at our navel if you can see it.
Look, all of those options are good for people if that's what they would like to do. I would caution that what got me here won't get me further in totality. So I definitely agree with factors of that. However, there's also many things that did get you to where you are today and will serve you well for the rest of your life. And generally speaking, that's being, a good, open, honest, trusting human. That's how you become a leader. You don't become someone who's a manipulator or, autocratic and dictatorial. We don't get there, generally speaking, and hopefully not. So take forward what serves you well and then do that reflection, as you say, on the beach, wherever you might be, about the world is going to be different. And it's going to be, and I guess a lot of it is going to be driven by the instability in our world. I think you would have to have your head in the sand to not have a huge amount of, sadness and worry about that. That's going to continue to play out some way in our lives, either indirectly or directly, and we get to see it on our screens. Closer to home, the cost of living, the challenges of homelessness, things like that are happening right now in our world. Those type of things need to, and they'll play out in our workplaces increasingly. And then from an easier perspective, perhaps, we look at AI that we were talking about. How is that going to impact the workforce? What does that mean for my team, for the people that I've built and the people who I've seen develop and grow? Will that really curtail their career? Looking at mergers, how do we bring organisations together, which means some people who helped get us to a position of merging may not be the go-forward team. That takes some strength, takes some courage, because it's difficult and it can be sad. So what we need to be able to do is think about, how do I stay across, the sense and the pulse and the rhythm of the organisation and my team and my people? And ultimately that is by that deep listening, truly being present, asking amazing questions to learn, not to answer, maybe answer later, but to listen first and really understand, so that when the next wave of ambiguity comes, which is absolutely inevitable, you're a bit more equipped to take that deep breath. What is it that I know to be true? What's the one thing I need to do to take that step forward? How do I think flexibly about this? How do I bring different ideas in to help solve this problem? And know that you may not get it right, but standing still is definitely going to be wrong.
A bias for action, courage, and humanity. How will you refresh this year, this Christmas break? Do you get some time away? What's going to be happening?
Absolutely. This is my the White Christmas, and visiting some amazing parts of our world, catching up with family and friends as well, and experiencing new things. I'm really, really looking forward. I'm going to parts of the world I've not been to before, so immersing myself in that. And you mentioned earlier about people watching. It's possibly one of my favourite things to do in another part of the world. Just find a little bar, have a glass of wine, and watch the world go by, and just see how does the world work in Budapest versus Vienna versus London versus Brisbane, and maybe. And I think a lot of it is the same, which is the beautiful thing about when you travel, when you see that we are the same the world over. We just might do it a little bit differently, and that's a good thing. Is it? So that will be what will definitely re-energize me.
Inspiring. A few years ago, on Christmas Eve, I was in Ottawa, in Ontario, Canada, which is white, and I was walking through the snow streets, the frozen lake, and I thought, I need a bar to go and sit into. So James Scotland found a Scottish bar where there was men in kilts serving beer and food in Canada. It just seemed obscure to me, so it was great. It was a wonderful thing to happen, and a great memory. And of course, Christmas carols playing in the Scottish bar in Canada, whatever. The other great thing I love is that Christmas Eve is the big deal. And
yes.
Have a good look at what Christmas Day is like in Europe, because it's different from us. For us, Christmas Day is the day, but it's the day after Christmas in Europe. So yeah, all the best. It's big.
Yeah, the Christmas Eve is beautiful. Looking forward to it.
Christmas Eve, yeah. We have a good one. And what's ahead for you in 2024? Any more of the same?
Yes, more of the same. We're really focusing on continuing our work and our support with organisations who are grappling with the ongoing pace and complexity of change and the ambiguity, helping people understand what their tolerance levels are. And by some of our work we do in Adaptive Minds, where you can complete an assessment to understand your tolerance levels as a starting point. So now what? So a lot of that type of work. We're also looking at some partnering arrangements in Canada, actually. You should mention that, which might therefore mean I need to pop over there
I would recommend it, yeah.
So that would be wonderful as well. Yeah, it's got to find a reason.
Absolutely.
So,
well, thank you for joining us. All the best for Christmas and for your trip and for the year ahead. Maybe we'll catch up again another year and find out how things have changed. It's been wonderful chatting to you. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And you too, have a wonderful Christmas. Stay safe. Swim between the flags. Put on that sunscreen. Totally different messages to what I'll have to take with me, but that applies to you.
Thank you very much. I live on the beach in Citrus Paradise, and so for something completely different this year, I'm going to Terrigal to sit on the beach in Terrigal with some friends of mine.
Oh, wildly different.
Well, that's it for another episode of Supply Circles, and that's it for this year. We're going to take a break and come back in mid-January. Thank you again for listening and for all your feedback and for creating a wonderful year for me and for the program. If you have any feedback on today's interview with the delightfully named Karen Fuster, or ideas to share, or if you just want to give me some feedback, hit me up at james.scotland@aigroup.com.au or head over to my LinkedIn page. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back in 2024 with more insights into the building of sustainable supply chains. Thank you for joining me. This is Supply Circles. I'm James Scotland. Merry Christmas and have a prosperous new year. Bye for now.